Listen, guys, Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall needs to happen. It saves the heavyweight division and it also elevates the sport again. I feel like we've been in this weird lull period for the first half of 2025. And it seems to me like the UFC needs this right now because the pay per views are down, the fan complaints are really high, and the Dana White approval rating is way down. Now, I'm going to discuss why I think this fight needs to happen. More than just a couple of topics that I listed, but in depth, why we need Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. And I think the first point is it makes this baddest man on the planet thing matter again. I mean, for centuries, right? People have been like, who's the baddest man on the planet? We've seen it right first with boxing. You have legends in boxing like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson holding that crown of baddest man on the planet. And then as MMA emerged, you had Fedor, Brock, Cain Velasquez, even Stipe, and most recently Francis Ngannou. But now we have Jon Jones. But do we really? Are we sure that it's Jon Jones, the baddest man on the planet? Because he's not the undisputed champion. Tom Aspinall, with the interim belt, seems like the most terrifying fight that Jon Jones could have ever imagined. He's extremely well rounded. He's got knockout power in his hands, and he's also got freak athleticism and has been doing martial arts since he was a kid. And he's in his damn prime right now. I think this fight is history, man. And I have my doubts about Jon Jones being able to deal with the size and the speed of Tom Aspinall. Ultimately, Jon Jones is still considered the GOAT, I think, regardless of the outcome of this fight. But I feel like the UFC needs to capitalize on the biggest fight in heavyweight, maybe ever, but most definitely the biggest heavyweight fight in this era. In Dana White's mind, I think he thought that this Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic fight would move the needle as some super fight. And it was cool to see Jon Jones versus Stipe, right? The heavyweight GOAT in the UFC versus, the true UFC GOAT. But Stipe was a corpse. Stipe was well past his prime, had been out for years, and was brutally knocked out by Francis Ngannou. And let's not forget, he had 3 fights with Daniel Cormier before the Ngannou matchup. He was washed. He was washed. His Aspinall fight is history. And I think it means more to the sport of MMA and the heavyweight legacy as the baddest man on the planet title will go as a whole, as opposed to just each individual fighter, right? Just opposed to Jon Jones or Tom Aspinall. This is history of heavyweight in a division that at one point was, I feel like, prominent and the peak of MMA. It's just become kind of like the crappiest weight class in the world. No one really cares. And I think that when there's balance in the heavyweight division, the sport grows too. And I think that the sport in some ways depends upon this fight. I know some will say, bro, you're reaching. That's far fetched. Are you sure about that? I feel like when I think about heavyweight being on point, I see every division below elevating too. And how can you not tell me there isn't a ton of excitement around the baddest man on the planet stepping in the damn cage? We rarely get to see it anymore. And heavyweights normally that are champions aren't active. I mean, you look at Francis Ngannou, he wasn't active. You look at Jon Jones recently, extremely inactive, passes Stipe Miocic's longest reign as heavyweight champ, but with just one title defense. There's a stillness to the heavyweight division. The division feels meek. There's a sense of boredom about it. And honestly, I'm sick of this what would have been or what should have been or what could have been, like the Ngannou fight. I want a what will be. And that's why I think that Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall has to happen. And I think it's also a chance for the UFC to step up their promotion. If you have watched recent pay-per-views, the UFC has kind of been putting out this cookie cutter copy and paste approach. They do the embeddeds, they do the countdown, they do a pre-fight press conference, they do the weigh-ins, and it's fight time. And maybe a few months out, they do like one, introduction press conference where they get, the marquee matchups on the table and they discuss a little bit months out before the pay-per-view. But there's no more world tours. There's no more face-to-faces. There's no more, wow, this matters. And like the world should stop to pay attention to what's happening here anymore. And I think that we can still have that. I don't think they are gone. I just think that the promotion is not putting the money into promoting the products to the level that they could potentially do. And it would grow the sport as a whole. It would also build up other stars. I feel like it's a worthwhile investment for the heavyweight division and for the UFC to make this fight happen, to make the heavyweight division matter again. It has to mean something. Now, pay Jon Jones what he's worth. This is an investment in something bigger than just Jon Jones. This is an investment in the sport of MMA. This is an investment in the UFC heavyweight division, and I think in the UFC. Jon Jones is asking for a lot of money, and I understand the UFC has a mentality about it of like, yo, we don't want to pay Jon Jones more than we need to. The goal with the UFC is pay the least amount of money to make the most amount of money. Understand that it works in a lot of senses, right? Because the UFC is still flourishing and doing well from a financial standpoint. But I think from a true fan-sided point of view, in a prime of the UFC, like it feels like we're in this lull period. I don't want to say the Great Depression of the UFC, but definitely not feeling like the peak UFC, which we had seen before. And it felt like every year was getting bigger and bigger. And I'm not saying things couldn't turn around with the Islam Makhachev and Jack Della fight and Topuria fighting Oliveira. There's big fights on the table. But for me, there's no fight bigger right now than Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. And of course, Jon Jones is going to ask for an astronomical amount of money. And if there's any time for the UFC to say, you know what, let's take this one on the chin, let's pay the man what he's worth. Let me tell you why they should pay Jon Jones what he's worth. Because if Tom Aspinall beats Jon Jones, heavyweight title matters again. And now there's a legacy connected to it. Well, Tom Aspinall beat Jon Jones. By many, Jon Jones was viewed as the GOAT of MMA. He beat an older Stipe, but still has that W. He made easy work of Ciryl Gane, who went to a close decision with Francis Ngannou. Seeing Tom Aspinall as a champion with a win over Jon Jones will make this division great again. And I think it makes the sport great again, too. And if Aspinall is to be beaten by an up-and-coming contender, it will be a heavyweight championship that seems to have a lineage once again. I hate this lull period of heavyweight. I hate when heavyweight isn't at its peak. I mean, for a long time, Stipe was at the top and he never connected with a massive amount of fans, but we still had the heavyweight division going, right? And the baddest man on the planet was still fighting fairly active. And then with Francis Ngannou, it was once a year, but you still were like watching Francis fight. It was like, okay, that's the baddest man on the planet and I'm ready to see what he can do. With Jon Jones, it's like, wait, he's got the belt, but Tom Aspinall's over there. We didn't get the Ngannou fight. I feel like that's bad enough as is because the Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones fight is a fight that I desired, you desired, we all did. We prayed on it and it didn't happen. To lose out on a Tom Aspinall fight would be, I think, the biggest fumble the UFC could make right now. In a time period where I feel like things are in some penultimate shift, and I think they could shift towards the right direction once again. And I think heavyweight could flourish once again. And I promise you, having Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones and promoting it properly, it's a mega fight. And it's a fight where you can put undercard stars as well, right? Put Paddy Pimblett on the card. Continue to blow him up. Put X fighter, Z fighter, whoever on the card. And you will notice that they will even draw more fan interest as opposed to the UFC just doing the cookie cutter promotion bullshit that they've been doing that we're all sick of. Because it doesn't really feel like it matters as much anymore. The fights will go on, right? The line of what matters and what isn't is kind of blurred. It feels like, well, there's another fight next weekend. Oh, it's a pay-per-view, but it's the pay-per-view next month. There's been good fights. Now, if you're a hardcore fan, of course, we've enjoyed the hell out of certain matchups. But I'm talking about name value. I'm talking about storylines that matter. And I'm talking about possibilities of growing the sport even more. And I feel like Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall is one of those heavyweight fights that could inspire a generation. And the heavyweight needs it, man. The heavyweight needs the motherfucking shock paddles and to get the life shocked back into it because it feels like it's dead. I mean, think about heavyweight. How many fat heavyweights do we have on the roster? How many heavyweights that have no potential of being a champion are in the top 15? The heavyweight division's pretty trash right now. There's one emerging prospect that people are keeping an eye on with Taliesin Teixeira, who's fighting Derek Lewis. He's promising for sure, but we don't know how far he can take it. I think we need more. I think the UFC needs to dial into finding heavyweight talent. Of course, heavyweight's a difficult weight class to find the best athletes in because, a lot of these large athletes tend to, lean towards football or whatnot. But I still think there's a market for heavyweight fighters in the UFC to absolutely make millions of dollars and take over. And I think there could be a heavyweight star that changes the game. And that baddest man on the planet title has to mean something again. Because in boxing, it always meant something. In earlier days of MMA, it seemed to mean something. Now, I feel like nobody really gives a fuck about heavyweight, but they give a fuck about this Jon Jones Tom Aspinall fight. Now, I'm talking this whole time about Aspinall beating Jones, but then you can play the contrarian to me and say, well, what happens if Jon Jones beats Tom Aspinall? What that does is that proves Jon Jones truly is the GOAT. And you know what? There needs to be somebody to get that heavyweight belt and build some intrigue again. Because if it ain't Aspinall, I don't know who it's going to be. And even if you'd say, well, damn, Jon Jones beats Aspinall, now the heavyweight's fucked again. They're going to do Aspinall versus Cyril Gahn for the new title after he retires. Maybe, which puts them in a low period, but they're not in any worse of a position than they are right now without that fight happening. I would rather see it through. And what happens when best case scenario for the UFC happens? Jon Jones is knocked out by Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall's star goes through the fucking roof, and he is able to sell out a damn stadium in the UK. I think it's a best investment right now. And I hope the UFC does pay Jon Jones what he's worth. I understand Jon Jones is kind of trolling, right? Saying things like, I'm done fighting. I wouldn't call it retired, but I'm enjoying life and other things. I personally believe to my core, those are negotiation tactics. I think Jon Jones is going to sign the dotted line. The UFC just needs to come up with a figure. But this fight definitely matters more than most of these other fights. For the heavyweight division to reach an all-time high and maybe get some life back in it again, and maybe some fucking young 16-year-old athlete is like, yo, shit, I wanna do MMA. I'm a big kid. Let me try it. And who knows who it could bring to the table years forthcoming. I think the investment is more than worthwhile. So the UFC, they need to buckle down and dial in. They need to bring the heavyweight division back. Enough of this crap, man. I'm sick of it. I'm fed up. I've been fed up for a while. I've been holding off on making this video because I've been trying to get my words together and, come up with the true reasons why I need it. And I think that it's just for heavyweight to thrive is a better UFC. It's not just about heavyweight. It's not just about Jon Jones lining his pockets. It's about the sport elevating, and it's about the UFC elevating too. And I really feel like a heavyweight championship fight not often happening, and especially not with a rightful top contender. It's like, what's the baddest man on the planet anymore? Isn't like fighting about finding who's the best in the world, who's the baddest? And the biggest and the baddest is the baddest man on the planet. So let's have them find out. There's not an undisputed champion at heavyweight. There's Jon Jones with the title, and there's Aspinall with the interim title. I need to see it. You need to see it. We need to see it. I hope you guys agree with me, to be honest with you. And I'll hope that the UFC is thinking the same thing that I am, and they end up getting this damn heavyweight fight booked. Because without it, it's a travesty. Without it, it's a detriment. Without it, it's a tragic downfall. And I think it would be one of the UFC's biggest mistakes. They fucked us. Dana White did not sign, Francis to the contract he wanted. He didn't give him the chance to box. The Jon Jones fight doesn't happen, right? And that upset a lot of fans, and that was disappointing. But we can move on from it because we got Tom Aspinall. Without this fight, man, I don't know. Cyril Gahn, Aspinall for the vacant title, or Aspinall just elevated to champ. I feel like it'll take a lot of time to build that intrigue back to heavyweight. Whereas one fight right here could get all the eyes on it. Casuals are like watching with the hardcores, and everybody's excited across all sports. And it feels like this could be one of those household name matchups where most people are talking about it. And I think it's about time the UFC has another one of those. We need it. Let's see what happens. Hopefully it comes to fruition. Guys, let me know in the comments if you agree. I'm going to throw a prediction. I think this fight happens in November, Madison Square Garden. Smash the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. I appreciate you all. I hope you guys enjoyed my rant. Nice little off-week savage rant. Saving the damn heavyweight division. Love you guys. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.